In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this really handy gardener's apron. It has lovely deep pockets on the front, but it's also got a secret pocket on the inside here, so maybe somewhere for your mobile phone, maybe loose change. It has an adjustable strap which fastens over with D-rings, and I think this would look very stylish in any fabric that you choose to make it from, whether it's denim, whether it's florals, whether it's checks, whether it's a ticking or something like a canvas would be absolutely ideal for it. And what a great gift idea for anybody that you know that enjoys gardening or even a little bit of housework or crafting. Let's get sewing. So I'm using check fabric as my top fabric. I have a plain red as the lining. Now I'm using quite a heavy weight of fabric. This is home decor weight, the same kind of weight as maybe a canvas, which is perfect for making the apron. Denim's a perfect fabric as well because it's quite substantial. If you're using a lighter weight of fabric, like just a cotton, then you may need to put some interfacing on the back of it just to give your fabric a little bit more stability. For my pockets, I've actually used a couple of strips from a fat quarter. And I've got a pattern with chickens on it, which looks very country, I think, perfect for the garden. So I've got two pocket pieces, which I've folded in half and pressed. Now, if you wanted to, you could use a plain of fabric on the back and line them. But do make sure if you're doing it this way and you have a directional fabric that your chickens are facing the right way. Because you see, if I turn that over, I've got upside down chicks. I've cut out two smaller pieces for the pocket, because remember this apron has a zip pocket on the inside to one side, so if you wanted to put your mobile phone in there, or maybe you've got some change and you don't want everything falling out as you're bending over, then that's an ideal place for a pocket. The zip, and then I'm using webbing as the strap, and it's going to fasten with a couple of D-rings. Change that if you wanted to, if you have some tape, or if you wanted to make a long strap, that's entirely up to you. And of course you can tie it in a bow at the back, you don't have to use the D-rings to fasten it. So let's get making it up. So the first thing I'm going to do is the pockets. And I want them to have a curve to them. It actually makes the opening a little bit wider on the top, so I can put larger items in there. If you're confident in cutting, just cut a curve around one corner. If you wanted to use something like a plate as a template, then feel free. But I'm just going to cut through all the layers all together so my pockets are symmetrical, like so. Then I'm going to fold these right sides together and sew all the way around, but leave a gap in the straight side of just a couple of inches or so, so I can turn them the right side out. Now I'm going to snip across the corner just to cut down on the bulk in the seam allowance. And take away some of the seam allowance around the curve. So you can either trim that closer to the seam, or if you have pinking shears, these are ideal. And that will help the seam sit flatter around the curve. Then let's turn this the right side out. And then we'll press it. Now you can of course add smaller pockets as well if you have enough room, because you can make the apron any size you like. If you wanted to make it longer, then just add a few inches to it. It really doesn't matter. And it's such a simple project to make. This is perfect for a beginner sewer. Nothing complicated about this at all. And it's a nice gift idea as well. Because of course, although we're calling it a gardening apron, you can wear it around the home as well. So it could be a crafting apron maybe. So just pull that out and press. I'm not going to sew the opening closed because when I put this onto the front of the apron, it will automatically get sewn over. So I'm just tucking in the edges of the fabric into the gap. Make sure that's nice and straight. There we go. So there's my 2 pockets. I'm going to top stitch just around the curved edge here, so that's going to be the open section on both of the pockets, and then we'll put them onto the apron. So just take the front part of the apron and place the pockets really wherever you want them to go. So if this is for you, maybe hold the apron up against yourself and put the pockets where they're going to feel comfortable. If you're going to measure, make sure that they're the same distance from each side and the same distance from the bottom. So we'll have a few pins to hold those in place, and then we'll sew. So we're going to sew down here, across the bottom, back up again. Importantly, where you start sewing and where you finish sewing, go backwards and forwards a few times, and that'll really strengthen the seam, because remember, you're going to be putting things in these pockets, so that there will be some strain under them at some point. Don't forget to take out the pins. So that's the front of my apron finished. Let me just trim away the loose threads here and make it tidy. So we'll put that to one side for a moment and make the zip pocket, which goes in the lining. So there's my 2 pocket pieces, and again you can make this as big or as small as you like. I'm going to draw a box on the back of here, which measures 1/2 inch in width. If you're making a bigger pocket, still 1/2 inch in width, but you can extend the length of this. My box is just going to be 6 inches on here. And this is going to form the whole, I call it a letterbox zip. I think it's called a placket, but I call it a letterbox because it looks like a letterbox. So this is going to be the hole that the zip sits behind. So we'll need the 1/2 inch wide box and then a line straight down the centre, which goes into a Y shape at each end, and that's going to be your cutting line. This goes over the back of the lining. Wherever you want it to sit. So I'm going to go 4 inches from the edge and about 1.5 inches from the top, and again sit that nice and squarely. Another couple of pins, and then I'm going to sew around the outside of the box with quite a small stitch through both layers. Always start with the needle in the down position when you're turning a corner, then you'll have a nice neat corner. Like so. Now you need a really sharp pair of scissors, and we're going to make a snip on the line and then cut straight down the centre of the hole and right into the corners as close as you can to the stitches, but without cutting through the stitches. So right into there, right into there. And then we're going to post the lining through the hole. An easy way to make this neat is to just press the lining of the pocket away from the lining. Push the fabric through, and you'll find it easier to press from the back. So it looks a little bit crumpled at the moment, but this will work. So I'm going to sit the seam right on the edge and press. The same on this side. And this is why it's important to cut right into those corners, because now I've got a nice sharp corner. And I turn it over. Again, I've got a little bit of puckering here, but when I stretch this out, that will disappear. There we go. And then we'll sew the zip in. I tend to use zips that are too long and cut them down to size. This is actually part of a continuous zip, and I don't like to give myself too much work. So I'm not going to pin and I'm not going to tack. I'm going to glue. So use a fabric glue pen and just glue around the edge of the hole. And place the zip facing down over the hole. When I turn this over, I can now arrange the zip so that it's sitting nice and centrally. And the ends are meeting. So I'm just going to give that a couple of seconds for the glue to adhere. It's not permanent glue, but if you let it dry a little bit, it's stronger. And then I'm literally just going to sew around the edge. You may find it easier to put the zipper foot on your sewing machine while you're doing that. I sewed straight over the top of the teeth of the zip, so it didn't really need the zipper foot on there. So that's the zip inserted. I now need to put the back of the pocket on. So I can now trim my zip down to the seam. The second side of the pocket goes face down here. And I'm going to sew around the edge of the pocket, but not through the lining. So as this goes underneath the sewing machine, I'm just going to move all of the lining out of the way and just sew the pocket. So that's the inside. Not going to see that at all. That's what we see on the lining. So I'll press that later when we've put the whole thing together, because now we're going to place the front of the apron to the lining of the apron, right sides together. And I'm just going to sew around the bottom 3 sides, so leave the top open. So sew around these 3 sides, snip across the corners to cut down on the bulk again. We'll turn it the right side out and press. I've top stitched all the way around. And I like top stitching because it gives a professional finish, but it also helps the seams to sit flat, particularly on thicker fabric. So almost finished. What I'm going to do now is to fold over the top of my apron to the right side by about 1/4 of an inch, doesn't have to be exact. And then the webbing goes on top of this bit so you don't actually see it, so you don't see the raw edge. So just keep that nice and flat with the edges together. Almost there. Doesn't matter if this section does look a little bit untidy because it's going to be behind the webbing. It does need to be straight. It's fine. Now with the webbing, and again you could use a strap or make one if you prefer. I'm going to have the fastening just to one side here. So my 2 D-rings are going to go on one end. And then you can see when I sew the webbing over the top of the folded over bit, it just gives a really nice neat finish. So on the inside, you don't have the raw edge there, it's all enclosed. So let's do the D-rings first. So simply thread through both of the D-rings, fold over the end, and I'm going to zigzag stitch down here, and I'm using a zigzag stitch to stop the ends from fraying. And then place this face down. In fact, we'll sew from the back. I think that'll make it easier. So I'm not going to pin through this because the webbing's quite thick. So just line up the edge of the folded section just inside the webbing and sew straight down. I'll do a couple of rows of stitches just to make sure that the seams are well and truly hidden inside. So there's my apron finished. 2 nice deep pockets on the front, 1 secret zip pocket on the back, and to fasten, just take the opposite end of your webbing, go through both the D-rings and then back through 1 D-ring. And that's a nice secure tie around the waist. I hope you enjoy making yours.